You only need one thing, and you can spot whether or not you're standing in the middle of a psyop. That one thing is, if the opinion that's coming out needs people to be silenced, it's a psyop. There are psychological operations in play.
Wow. So if you can't question it, if you're supposed to just go along, it's a psyop.
Yeah, and if people have to be silenced or publicly shamed because of their information, and they're not telling people the sky's falling, they're just saying basic stuff and they need to be silenced, that is a psyop.
So I'm literally exhausted and tired of all of this. So we're just going to put some videos together and look at a few things. Now, silenced. Why would there be a need to silence your Anzac history for the last 17 years? 17 years of ignoring it, abusing it, mocking it, slandering it, and basically trying to squash it out of existence. Why would that need to occur? Would the Australian government, the police forces, the military, the state governments all be involved in something that is a psyop? Psychological operations to make you continue flying a foreign flag. A foreign flag introduced in Flags Act 1954. So today, just going to go through some videos and demonstrate a few things, because I'm tired of putting all of this together to just keep repeating myself over and over and over and over and over again.
Mr. Albanese, I have a question for you on behalf of hundreds of thousands of Australians around the country. Hi. Nice to meet you. Hey. There are hundreds of thousands of Australians around the country who are unable to afford housing. And I have a question for you, Mr. Albanese. When are you going to put Australians first?
So you can see that Elbow doesn't work for you. And he has these Zionist handlers that step in, and you don't even get to address your own Prime Minister because he's the CEO of a foreign administrating corporation run by a foreign power under the rules of usufruct. So there might be an interest in psychological operations against you, just like those two handlers stepping in to quash any questioning of your Prime Minister.
Israel is not the Jewish state.
It is not a Jewish state. It's a Zionist terrorist state.
It's a Zionist terrorist state.
Correct.
So why is it that they don't consider you? Look, a Jewish person is against that. Are you anti-Semitic?
Let me ask you, am I anti-Semitic?
Tell me, that's what they want to say. Anyone who's against them is anti-Semitic. You're a Jew, yet you're against them.
But the difference between Judaism and Judaism is a religion, Zionism is nationalism. This has nothing to do with anti-Semitic. We Jews lived in peace with the Palestinian people hundreds of years, and we lived in peace and we can still live in peace. It's only because Zionism is the philosophy of there's a political movement.
So this nationalism might be a United Nations agenda, a democratic society, when Australia is not a democratic society. It's a constitutional federation, a constitutional monarchy in God, King and country. Judaism is a faith, like the blessing of Almighty God under your Christian faith, that your politicians don't observe as they work for this Zionism. This Zionism comes out of England, Scotland, Charles III, pushing this literal Zionism of the scripture on the world because he's beholden to a moneylender.
When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
So there's your PSYOP, your psychological operations carried out by people like Avi Yemeni, who is Israel first, pushing the whole Nazi ideology against Australians because they are anti-Semitic, without giving any question to a Palestinian who is also a Semite. These things are very obvious to those that are in the know, but the general population, brainwashed into what they lap up on the nightly news every night, don't seem to comprehend that they're being manipulated.
I gotta be careful the way I say this. They're gonna try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. I mean, that's, and I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
When those PSYOPs no longer work, from a people that are willing to murder 1 million women and children and try and sway the minds of a Western population into thinking that's okay, they resort to violence and extremes to uphold their narrative. This Australian government aids and abets that narrative by following order of the United Nations on behalf of that moneylender. The PSYOPs start to lose their traction and they seek removal of that one thing that could show them for what they are, like South Africa did before the ICJ, by getting Netanyahu to be recognised as the genocidal maniac that he is. And the unfortunate reality is that all your politicians, no party here will help you, all your politicians bow to that Zionism.
What American people will say is that there's no Hamas on the other side. There's no Hamas comparison in Israel.
Interesting. So let's talk about Hamas. How did Hamas originate?
Bassem is asked about Hamas, but instead he flips it and schools Don Lemon on the history and who propped them up and delivers a devastating line at the end.
And I'm sorry, and can I just like a pop quiz? 2019, who said this in order to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state? Yeah, Netanyahu. So Netanyahu, basically, he was caught on tape many times bragging about sending money to Hamas. So every time you tell me Hamas, I will tell you Netanyahu. So can we just like enough of that, because I'm really sick and tired of like the same conversation again. You guys are talking about Hamas, and Hamas has been bullshit and being financed under the eyes and nose of Netanyahu.
These powers create their enemies so they can continue their perpetual wars for their financial gain. And that financial gain is taken from your countries while they manipulate your peoples and use that taxation money or moneylenders' money to siphon your wealth out of you to the point where they no longer recognize you and believe they are in full command of what was once yours.
Yo, welcome to 1995, bro. Gas prices are only $1.09 a gallon. You can rent a place for just $550 a month, and a $35,000 salary is more than enough for a decent, comfy life. At night, families sit together and watch TV, whether it's Friends or the O.J. Simpson trial taking over the news. Every Friday, we hit up Blockbuster to rent movies, and we all know the drill. Be kind, rewind.
The internet is just starting to pop up in homes, and AOL's You've Got Mail is like the sound of the future.
At the mall, the food court is filled with the smells of Cinnabon and Sparrow, while stores like Gap and Radio Shack are packed with people. Dude, compared to 2025, would you want to go back to 1995?
The demise of a country relative to a moneylender and the manipulation of your government since 1967, when they lowered the Admiralty ensign and continued to use a foreign national flag up until this day in administration of what would be considered your debt to society, a society they have destroyed, undermined, and divided, and started to make you hate one another over the very thing that administered you out of everything.
Why's that? Where were you born? Sydney. Yeah. That's where I'm born, yeah. How can you not serve us? That's not a Union Jack.
Well, it has
It's
a
a
Union
beautiful
Jack.
flag.
And people organising this are Nazis. And they said, bring the Eureka flag, which is white nationalism.
Well, if you walk up the street and listen to it. Are you the manager here?
This is black land. Well, they put me on so that I can deal with I'm just trying to go on. Because you're preaching white nationalism.
Well, where are you? I think you're a shit.
How do you know about the border? Are you from Norway? Australia does not fucking exist. Australia doesn't exist.
What the fuck?
What? Federation of
What's in your brain?
Federation of 100 and something.
Manipulated by a Zionist psy-op to make you hate one another instead of stand up united against the very thing that turned your country into a shithole. The finances of the Reserve Bank and the cost of your housing is relative to the crashing dollar and not the immigration. This government has manipulated you into attacking each other while it plans to enslave you with digital IDs and further oppression in your prison farm.
I was asked to do Celebrity Big Brother in Australia, and I was offered a huge sum of money, so I said yes. At the same time, Australia's locked down, been locked down for 2 years. No one's allowed to leave, no one's allowed to come back. People can't go and visit their dead gran. People are stuck in the UK, can't get back to their own kids in their own country, but they're going to fly me in to do Celebrity Big Brother. And I'm like, righty, okay, yeah, sure. And I'm going to have to spend 15 days in lockdown, in quarantine, before I even get into the house, because I have to be, So over I go, and 2 police officers have to come on the plane to take me off the plane. And I have to be in a police van taken to my isolation prison. I am then escorted into the building. You have to be processed by a police team, taken up to the 26th floor by a member of the army and a member of the navy, and put in my quarantine room, prison. And they take the key. I'm not allowed a key. I'm not allowed to touch the front door of my room. I have to stay inside. When they bring my food, they're going to knock on the door. I have to wait 30 seconds. Then I'm allowed out. If I smell, I'm being briefed on this. And the thing that really grips me as someone who, purposefully should be military is someone had to brief that guy briefing me for him to brief me with those bullshit. Someone had to stand there with a uniform and a straight face and say, 30 seconds, they're allowed to open the door. When they open the door, they're allowed to get their food. To get their food, they must have a mask. And I was like, I cannot deal with this level of bonkers. Day 2, 5 a.m, and I lost my shit. And I went online, did a live, and no one knew where I was. And I was like, I'm here in Sydney, and I'm in a country where no one's allowed to be, no one's allowed to come. People can't get to, and I frickin' went for it. And I gave it the whole, this is the tyranny of the people. You people need to rise up. I'm sitting in your country. I'm not vaccinated. I shouldn't be here. You are being pissed on. And I tell you, off I went back for a sleep. I woke up and Australia blew up. They said that they were cancelling my visa. I never even, they gave me the visa, and that I was now an illegal immigrant in the country. I never tried to get in. They brought me, and that I was going to be taken to an immigration deportation centre to be held. And then my electricity went off. Then they stopped delivering food. You're on your own and they're taking away your light, your food. They're calling you an illegal. They're going to deport you. And it's like, holy, it got really, really dark. And so these wagons of police officers turned up like I was Hannibal Lecter, full breathing apparatus, all the rest of it, shoved me in a van and deported my ass.
Your country turned into a prison camp while your politicians openly serve Zionism and external powers to the Constitution in what could be considered an act of treason, but because they serve administration under the rules of usufruct, do the bidding of their Zionist masters to the full tilt of warfare, where they aid and abet very clearly the genocide of over 1 million women and children in Palestinian land that has been occupied by people that murdered your very ancestors.
בנימין נתניהו, מה הוא החזון שלך? מה החזון שלך, תגיד לי? מזה 30 שנה אתה רוצח סדרתי של השלום.
לא, עצור. רד מהדוכן מיד. רד מהדוכן מיד. להוריד אותו עכשיו.
מה החזון שלך?
רוצח סדרתי בקפלן, לא פה.
רוצח סדרתי של השלום זה אתה.
רד מהדוכן. רוצח סדרתי, רד מפה.
Unable to speak the truth, you are manipulated by a Zionist-controlled parliament, which also controls social media and the media itself. This puts you in a position where you are silenced for speaking up against the murder of 1 million Palestinians in the last 2 years alone. Consider what they've done in their annexation of land since they terrorized Palestine with Ergon fighters back in 1946.
Oren Anolik, the ambassador of Israel to Cyprus, has accused the Cypriot people of anti-Semitic rhetoric, and I would like to point out a few things. You have the audacity, Mr. Anolik, to point the finger at us and call those in Cyprus who are concerned about the uncontrolled purchase of our land by third country nationals, including Israelis, as anti-Semites. You have the audacity to accuse the citizens of our country who criticize Israel and have the courage to raise their voices against the genocide committed by your country of anti-Semitism. I urge you, Mr. Oren Anolik, to stand in front of a mirror and repeat, I am an anti-Semite, because you, Mr. Anolik, and the Netanyahu government that you represent use the Jewish religion and anti-Semitism to promote Israel's political goals. In the name of the Jewish religion and the security of the Jewish people, the paramilitary terrorist organizations Haganah and Irgun, which evolved and were integrated into the IDF, murdered, raped, massacred, and bombed innocent civilians. In the name of the Jewish religion and the security of the Jewish people, in order to create the state that you represent, 750,000 Palestinians were displaced from their ancestral homes and their land. You committed massacres like the one in Tandura, and then the terrorists of Haganah and Irgun came out in public and in documentaries and laughed and boasted about their achievements. You created an apartheid state with walls of shame erected between neighborhoods, with checkpoints, and with separate streets for the chosen ones and other streets for the Palestinians. In the name of the Jewish religion and the security of the Jewish people, you have massacred 18,000 children in 628 days. How many children correspond to each day, Mr. Anolik? You have bombed universities, schools, libraries, churches, mosques, hospitals, World Cultural Heritage Sites. You have leveled Gaza, and it is estimated, according to Harvard, that approximately 377,000 missing people are buried under the rubble. You protect and glorify extreme racist voices like that of Daniela Weiss, who has made the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, the expansion of illegal settlements, and the inclusion of neighboring countries within Israel's borders her life's goal. If you disagree with her, Mr. Anolik, why doesn't the government you represent arrest her for her illegal activity? The government you represent enables settler atrocities. And even today as we speak, settlers protected by Israeli soldiers attacked and burnt the village of Tabia where Christians live. You have the audacity, Mr. Anolik, to patronize us with remarks such as, what threatens democracy is not diversity, but the spread of intolerant myths that target entire communities. You? Really? You, who represent a regime whose ministers like Yoav Gallant declared we are fighting human animals, referring to the Palestinians in Gaza? You, who represent the Netanyahu regime and ministers like Avigdor Lieberman, who stated in 2018 that there are no innocent people in Gaza? You, whose minister Amichai Eliyahu declared that not a single drop of water, food, or humanitarian aid should enter, and that the gates of hell should rain down on those who remain in Gaza? You, whose state has been dehumanizing a group of people, the Palestinians, and using collective punishment against them for decades? You mentioned religious freedom. You, whose ethno-state was created to house a single religion, and automatically one can receive your citizenship from any country they may come from, just as long as they belong to that religious group? You are right about one thing, Mr. Anolik. Cyprus is democratic, for the time being at least, where we still have the right to express our positions freely, unlike your own country regime, where the Knesset, your parliament, has expelled Ofer Kassif because he claimed that Israel is committing genocide, and is now trying to expel another member of parliament, Ayman Odeh, for calling a genocide a genocide. Anti-Semitism is a despicable form of racism, something I condemn in the strongest possible way. It is your own state, however, even before it was founded, that instrumentalized and continues to instrumentalize to this day the Holocaust of the Jewish people and the Jewish religion to promote the political goals of the Zionist movement. You can continue to call those who oppose all this anti-Semites, just as you call the Jewish writers and academics Gabo Mater, Norman Finkelstein, Naomi Klein, Ilan Pappé, Avi Schleim anti-Semites and self-hating Jews. No matter how much you cry wolf and deny the facts, you cannot hide a genocide. I could never hate an entire people because they belong to a specific religion. I could never hold an entire people responsible for their government's actions. But a people who 83% believe that Gaza should be flattened will be ingrained into the world's consciousness as evil fascists. And the rulers of your country are responsible for this mentality.
As your politicians openly aid and abet this genocide, not only by sending weapons of war to this apartheid state, but also openly in the Australian government, manipulated by a reserve bank to follow the bidding of that Zionist power. We can see this in the Aboriginals like Jacinta Price and the independents like Pauline Hanson's One Israel Party, in that they are openly handled by these Zionist masters due to their manipulation by money lenders in the Anzacs Temple, a crown country that was manipulated by foreign money suppliers at which your politicians do the bidding of, while they manipulate you into believing it's your responsibility.
Senator Roberts. Thank you, Deputy President. I speak to take note of Minister Ayers' comment. One of the most fundamental parts of a senator's job is to review and scrutinise the government. That's why I support almost every single order for production of documents, regardless of who moves it. Most importantly, scrutinising the government means scrutinising how the government is spending money. And by the way, scrutinising the impacts of government policy on the national economy and on individual Australians is part of scrutiny of government. But building back on the first point, scrutinising how the government is spending our money. The government forgets that what it spends isn't the government's money, it's taxpayer money. And Senator Minister Walsh, recently couldn't utter the words taxpayers. I asked her what was government money. She said it's about revenues, and the policies fully costed. She would not, she twisted and turned and gave me several other answers, could not utter the words taxpayers' money. There is no such thing as government money. It is all taxpayer money. These people, as taxpayers, we all pay taxpayer money. It is Australians' money. Last week I spoke in the Senate about Minister Bowen taking subsidies out of scrutiny, completely out of scrutiny, away from parliamentary scrutiny altogether, in a cosy little deal. Billions of dollars. And I mentioned a potential deal with a recently chaired company by, taken over by a fund taken over by Julia Gillard, the former Labor Prime Minister. I made no imputations. I'm just saying we need to have a look at that data. The government is hiding, stopping scrutiny, stopping us doing our jobs, which is the theme for this government. Too often the government is willing to waste hard-earned tax dollars. The minister has just been hauled in front of the Senate to explain, because the government has refused to answer, where they're spending taxpayer money. This is the second. We've just had a discussion about Housing Australia. And the government has refused, again, refused. This secretive Labor government refuses to tell Australians where it's spending its taxpayer money. Why the secrecy? Why the hiding? It's not your money, it's the Australians' money. It's because you don't want Australians to know that you don't treat taxpayer money with respect. Now,
manipulated by a moneylender and its rehabilitation loans, the public are brainwashed into believing that it's taxpayers' money. The tax being a payment on the performance of a loan from the International Monetary Fund makes it foreign money lenders' money. As a loan, you are to pay it back, and the performance of that loan is paid through by your sweat labour or slavery pushed upon your prison farm while you are subordinated into compliance by the state. Bankrupted in the Currency Act of 1965, all gold and silver taken out of the money supply and replaced with International Monetary Fund's rehabilitation funds, senators and representatives con the Australian people into believing that their taxation goes towards running an economy when it is all borrowed money to rehabilitate the economy, but taken at liberty to keep you enslaved instead of rehabilitating you out of the requirement to use a reserve bank and a foreign moneylender's hand. These politicians have lied to you continuously about the money supply, herein detailing it as the Australian people's money, when this couldn't be further from the truth.
You know, as a Zionist Israeli, I would like to answer a question. Do you know the people that constantly go on and on about why those poor Palestinians don't defend themselves? You know, the genocide that we are committing on them, the ethnic cleansing that we are doing to them now, why don't they defend themselves? Hey, never mind them. Those people have nothing to defend themselves with. I think you should worry about why doesn't America defend itself from us? Oh yes, the one that has the most sophisticated weapon in the world and brags all the time about being the most powerful country in the world. We own them, we bully them, we do more damage to them than to the Palestinians. We take their money, we take their tax. They're happy to hand it over to us. And that's what makes us proud, because we've eventually realized we are the ones that rule this world, not them. But in fact, it's us who rule the world. You never hear an American opening his gob, you know, in their Congress. You never hear them going on about why is Israel bullying us? Why is Israel taking our tax money? Why do we have to pay Israel so much money? Why do you have to? They allow us everything. We killed so many people in America. They never ever punished us. They never said anything. They never even raised their eyes or their heads. That's how powerful we are. Forget those poor Palestinians that have absolutely nothing to defend themselves with. We press the button. We order, and America delivers. Without complaint, without asking questions. They deliver because they know we are the masters. We rule them. We tell them what to do. We tell their people what to do. We killed Kennedy. They said nothing. We did that big, those big buildings in New York, a long time ago. They said nothing. They blamed it on the Arabs. Because the Arabs are pushovers. Easy to step on. Absolutely. Yeah. We are the ones that run just the show. So don't bother yourself about why the Palestinians don't defend themselves. The British, the big mama, the one that made us, that created us. We bully them. We own every single one of them, including their king. We rule the king of Britain. We tell him to shut up, never ever mention Israel, never ever speak about Israel. And he knows. We are in the parliament. 99% of those British parliamentarians you see, they are ours, in our pockets. We bought them all. We are their boss. We are their messiah. Because they know we are the chosen ones, not them. They know they are good guys. And they want to be good guys. As for the Germans, you never hear them moaning or complaining. Never. Because we put them on a guilt trip. We put them on a guilt trip a long time ago. And that guilt trip's still working, still producing. We're still milking them. In fact, the Germans love and enjoy us milking them. They are the biggest provider of weapons to us for free. That's the beauty. That's how powerful it is. That's powerful. That's what powerful is. Is to make a country like Germany and Britain and America and Europe bow to you. Kneel. We change the laws for them. We tell them how to convict people, what method and what way to use with people who protest. We send them people to train them over there. We rule them. And if any of them has the audacity and to counter what I've just said, let them make a video and expose me. Let them make a video and debunk me. They can't, because they know we are the masters. The Zionist Israeli, we rule them. We boss them. We hold every single one of them by the balls. Your banks, we put the bosses inside your banks. Yes. Your courts, we put the top judges inside your courts. And none of you can say anything. Because we worked on you for so many years and we made you people of, we turned you into cowards. Yes, I'm talking about the citizens of Europe and Britain and America. Yes, we made you cowards. Servant, happy to serve us, this Zionist. You know we do bad, but you help us. You don't accept it when anybody else does bad, including inside your country. But when we do bad, you find a justification for our bad. And that means only one thing, and proves only one thing, that we are above you, we are better than you, we are the boss, we are the masters, you are the slave. And you're going to stay the slave forever. Because those Palestinians that never defend themselves are the only free ones, in fact. Because they have stones, they use stones against us. You have nothing to use against us. Even you, in your own country, in your Britain or Europe, anywhere, Germany, France, Italy, Norway, Denmark, Holland, all of those, Belgium and America. Even the people there, when they protest, we order them to send the police. Yes, we phone your foreign minister or your home office minister and tell them, all right, send the dogs, and accuse them of being terrorists and call them what, all the evil things, that they are the horrible people, we are the good ones, and defend us, knowing perfectly well that we are the biggest criminals, but we are proud criminals. We love it. We enjoy being proud criminals because we have dogs such America and Europe to stand behind our backs and provide us with anything we need. We can kill as many Arabs as we want. And the Americans, and we can even kill Americans. We kill tons of Americans, tons of British, French, Europeans. They've never, not a single one of them, got any compensation back or even an excuse. Not even a little sorry they didn't get out of us. Why? Because we're superior. We are chosen. So that means we are superior to you. And you, the guys, serve us. That's all you do. Serve us. Be lucky that you have a job. Be lucky that you have something to eat. And make sure that you pay for our health service, and you pay for our free education, and you pay for all the amenities that we need and all the social services that we need, and shut the trap up, because we, the Zionist Jews in Israel, are your boss. Okay? Keep going, boys, because you are cowards, you are worthless, and we see you no different to the Palestinians. Fever, whatever.
A prison farm controlled by a moneylender that has no remorse for its actions as it commits heinous international war crimes around the world, while it has money in all of your politicians' pockets. This is very evident if you look at every single politician in the entire Australian government. This is very evident by the manipulation of the Australian Defence Force under the United Nations. This prison farm has been brainwashed to be subservient goy to a foreign power while it forgets who it is itself, while these politicians deny the very existence of the lineage into the Constitution they are supposed to serve, creating a situation of treachery against the Australian Imperial Crown forged by your Anzac in the League of Nations, wherein a mandate for Palestine was created so that Palestine could be a self-governing statehood. Your Anzac died so that Palestine could be a free nation state. Your ancestors were murdered by these very Ergon fighters that came down from Eastern Europe and invaded Palestine and murdered and bombed the governance that was helping Palestine to exist. A big change has happened around the world where this Israeli government has been put on notice for 80 years of terrorizing a Palestinian state, and you see people like Albo openly support a Palestinian state in a prison farm called Gaza when Israel occupied and manipulated the entire nation state of Palestine and took the land by force.
The Commonwealth of Australia recognises the state of Palestine. We have had in Australia a long-term position on a bipartisan basis of two states. One of those states is, of course, Israel. The other, of course, is Palestine. And this recognition being announced today in sync with our international partners, the United Kingdom and Canada, means that 3 of the Five Eyes nations are all making this decision today. We are seeing the Israeli government continue to provide support for illegal settlements and an expansion in the West Bank. We're seeing a catastrophic humanitarian crisis unfold in Gaza. The idea that Israel is just sitting back waiting to negotiate is not what is happening here. This is about the world saying enough is enough. We want peace and security in the Middle East. This is Australia playing a role.
A two-faced politician still doing the bidding of that money lender while locked into a game that he has no say in at all. Now authorising the ownership of land across the Palestinian territory, Albo tries to voice a concern for Palestinians in minor territories that are left behind after the total invasion by those Eastern European Zionists. This becomes very evident when you see the use of the propaganda against Australians now complaining at the Albanese government without any knowledge of the fact that it's all one power controlled by that money lender, regardless of the party or independent that sits in that building.
Yes, in Adelaide turned ugly with 16 alleged neo-Nazis, including a teenager, arrested after they staged a vile counter-protest, forcing peaceful demonstrations to be delayed. Members of the Nationalist Socialist Network took to the State War Memorial after marching through the CBD.
Australia for the white man! Rest must go! Australia for the white man! Rest must go!
A West Australian man has been charged with displaying a Nazi symbol. Group members who travelled from Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania were also charged with a raft of offences.
Allowing the incitement of violence and civil unrest to take place, these organised protests are manipulated by that Zionist power to their own benefit, while they ignore or silence the very thing that your Anzac forged and left behind for you, and give it no voice at all. With New South Wales Police accusing that very creation of being a terrorist power or terrorist organisation, it could be demonstrated through New South Wales Supreme Courts that it is impossible for what is occupied to be considered a terrorist organisation when that occupier is what allows the terrorising of that foundation at international law. Much like occupation of Palestine, they occupy your parliament and manipulate your members into using this land as their prison farm.
Ronnie, what's up with your tie? You're gonna get us in trouble. No, but this is the only red tie I have. Okay, it's fine. That's not red. It's pink. It's not pink. It's at least salmon. All right. That's a shade of red. It's not red enough. It's gotta be mugger red. Dude, calm down. God, is this your first dictator? Listen. Listen. They don't care about the exact shade, okay? It's just about being visibly uncomfortable while you praise them like a toddler. We love you, Donna! You did so good! You get all your poopy in your potty! Yeah, so good! So good!
As your leaders begin to demonstrate their fascism, they demonstrate they're under the thumb of a moneylender and they can't pay that moneylender back. They get away with heinous crimes such as the pedophile offences that were swept under the rug by the judiciary and this Australian government, because they would demonstrate very clearly the thumb that they are under.
Right now, there have been survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill. They're calling for these case files, these documents to be released. And Thomas Massey, who was sponsoring a discharge position to get the House to vote on the release of those documents, says he doesn't believe you're implicated in these files, but many of your friends and donors may be, and he says that's why the Justice Department is redacting them and slow walking the release. Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir? So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. Even if you look at D.C. right now, D.C., it's a totally safe zone. It's called a safe zone. That's a term. It's a term of art. It's a safe zone because it's very safe. You can walk down the street now and nothing's going to happen. No crime, no murders, no nothing. Because we had a lot of problems with certain places, and we still do. All run by Democrats, or for the most part run by Democrats.
While your country is run by criminals that continue to get away with their crimes, your population sits there dumbfounded, even though it's told about those crimes. It just doesn't know how to react.
I throw this plate up, it won't break.
Yes, it will.
You believe me?
No.
Just believe me. Watch. Okay?
This better not break.
For you to catch it!
Why would I catch it when you just said you'd throw it up and it wouldn't break?
Well, I thought you would know that a plate would break, Dad! The whole point was for you to catch it so I could say, haha, I was right! You're supposed to catch it! Why would you let your son throw up a plate that you knew that would break? Why would you?
I don't know, honestly. I don't. I'm an idiot, I guess.
And basically your fault.
Okay.
Populations sit there dumbfounded, unable to deal with a truth presented to them time and time and time again. Unable to hold their public servants to account, they become warded to the state like the goyim of a foreign military power, pushed around and manipulated while these politicians continue to aid and abet serious international war crimes around the world. The populations dumbed down in their schools can't comprehend the situation they find themselves in.
If you're very, very stupid, how can you possibly realize that you're very, very stupid? You'd have to be relatively intelligent to realize how stupid you are. There's a wonderful bit of research by a guy called David Dunning at Cornell, who's a friend of mine, I'm proud to say, who's pointed out that in order to know how good you are at something requires exactly the same skills as it does to be good at that thing in the first place, which means, and this is terribly funny, that if you're absolutely no good at something at all, then you lack exactly the skills that you need to know that you're absolutely no good at it.
In total ignorance, your parliament employs very stupid politicians that just do the bidding and get paid by a foreign power to do that bidding, while they allow a genocide and a takeover of an entire country to go on before their eyes without any ability to speak up against what is obviously a genocide or Holocaust 2.0.
המענה לניסיון האחרון לכפות עלינו מדינת טרור בלב ארצנו, המענה הזה יינתן לאחר שובי מארצות הברית. תמתינו. יש לי מסר ברור לאותם מנהיגים שמכירים במדינה פלסטינית לאחר הטבח הנורא ב7 באוקטובר. אתם מעניקים פרס עצום לטרור. ויש לי מסר נוסף עבורכם. זה לא יהיה. לא תקום מדינה פלסטינית ממערב לירדן. במשך שנים אני מנעתי את הקמתה של מדינת טרור זו מול לחצים אדירים, גם מבית וגם מן החוץ. הכפלנו את ההתיישבות היהודית ביהודה ושומרון ונמשיך בדרך זו. המענה לניסיון האחרון לכפות עלינו מדינת טרור בלב...
In their ignorance and their stupidity, politicians follow orders and allow the division of their own country in protests and hatred, but also with immigration designed to divide and conquer. Designed to create civil unrest, helped on by the police forces who join the foray in the streets with their arms of appointment or military arms, ready to use them against anybody that speaks up against that division. With these protests to fly an occupier's flag generated by that Zionism itself, with puppets that you know very well, but are unaware of the links that appear behind them.
Who is Tommy Robinson, and who helped him get to where he is today? When we look into the background of the organisation he founded, the English Defence League, we could take the view that it was intended to be an offshoot of the terrorist Zionist organisation, the JDL, the Jewish Defence League. In fact, his co-founder at the English Defence League was an individual who called himself Paul Ray. Paul Ray, prior to founding the English Defence League, infiltrated the International Solidarity Movement, a pro-Palestinian organisation which Rachel Corrie had been a member of. Paul Ray infiltrated and spied on this pro-Palestinian organisation and then submitted the information to several different intelligence agencies. Following his work for Israel, Paul Ray founded the English Defence League with Tommy Robinson. When it came time for the English Defence League to be registered on Companies House, that was carried out by a former Israeli soldier, Roberta Moore. Moore led what they called the EDL's Jewish Unit, which regularly partnered with the Zionist Federation to hold demonstrations outside the Israeli embassy. Roberta Moore is pictured here with the vice chair of the Zionist Federation at the time, Jonathan Hoffman.
Jonathan Hoffman is a former vice chair of the Zionist Federation. Members of the racist English Defence League, or EDL, attended a demonstration that Hoffman helped organise. He is photographed alongside Roberta Moore, the founder of the EDL's Jewish division. She will later express her admiration for Anders Breivik, the neo-Nazi who murdered 77 people in Norway.
When Roberta Moore was asked if the EDL was exploiting the Zionist movement, she replied, "If anything, we are exploiting them."
I've received these packages today.
He's admired somewhat as one of the brains of the EDL. He's just got a delivery of quotes from the Quran from his researcher in Israel.
Roberta Moore is pictured here alongside the head of the Canadian branch of the Zionist terror organisation, the JDL, and the genocidal Israeli politician Moshe Feiglin, who has called for the complete annihilation of all human life in Gaza. On the 28th of February 2013, the English Defence League, as registered on Companies House, was changed. The name of the organisation became the Jewish Defence League, JDL UK. It's important to remember that the JDL is designated as a terrorist organisation by the US government. It was founded by Meir Kahan, the well-known Israeli fascist who advocated for the complete ethnic cleansing of Palestine.
If I were the Minister of Defense, there wouldn't be one Arab left here. I want them out alive, and if not alive, dead.
But the connections of Tommy Robinson and the English Defence League to the JDL do not end there. One of the earliest supporters of the EDL and a regular speaker at their rallies outside of the Israeli embassy was none other than Rabbi Nachum Shifrin.
How would you feel if one day your children or your grandchildren are saying 5 times a day, Allah Akbar? Well, this is what is coming down on you here and now. It will be recalled on this day that it was the EDL that started the liberation of England.
Nachum Shifrin was the driver for the founder of the JDL, Mir Kahan. The only other time the English Defence League was registered on Company's House was by Tommy Robinson's personal assistant, Helen Gower. When she registered the organisation, the name was the English and Jewish Defence League. So the question has to be asked here, was Tommy Robinson's English Defence League founded to be an offshoot of the Zionist terrorist organisation, the JDL? And if so, why hasn't that been mentioned or written about extensively in the British media? Tommy Robinson then went on to be a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Centre. Now, the David Horowitz Freedom Centre shares funders with the Friends of the IDF and illegal settlements in the West Bank. But that position was directly funded by tech billionaire Robert Shillman. Who is Robert Shillman? Well, he was a board member on the Friends of the IDF at the very same time that he was funding Tommy Robinson to the tune of £8,000 a month, according to his other former assistant, Lucy Brown. Here we see Robert Shillman speaking at the Zionist Organization of America and describing his pen and his checkbook as weapons.
With this pen and my checkbook, I provide ammunition. I wield a pen to provide ammunition to those organizations like ZOA who are on the front lines in this battle.
Tommy Robinson has also received funding from the US neocon think tank, the Middle East Forum, which was quoted 13 times by Anders Breivik in his manifesto he released before killing over 70 people. The head of the Middle East Forum is Greg Roman, who's a former employee of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Israeli Ministry of Defense. Now, all of these connections would certainly cause you to question where Tommy Robinson's ultimate loyalties lie, especially when he has been pictured on the top of a tank in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights of Syria and stated so clearly that he would enter a war on behalf of Israel.
If there was a war tomorrow, which there will be, because I'll probably start at the end of the session, if there was a war and it kicked off, I would be there on the front line fighting for Israel.
Save our kids? What about the 20,000 kids killed by Israel in Gaza? When Israel killed 3 former British soldiers with an airstrike in Gaza, what was the response of Britain's patriot, Tommy Robinson? British people that do aid work in Gaza are cucks. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. How can Tommy Robinson define himself as a patriot but speak with such callousness about the death of former British soldiers? I think Tommy Robinson owes an apology to the families of John Chapman, James Kirby and James Henderson. Those who serve as an attachment to the war industry have sought to pin the blame for what is happening in this country on Russia. It's interesting because there is far more of a material connection between Tommy Robinson and a particular genocidal ally in the Middle East.
Manipulated by money masters into the division of your country through immigration. On the other hand, they fund the very protests that rise up against that immigration. They support both sides of the fence so that you spend your time in a mode of hatred instead of realizing they are manipulating you out of your constitution and the lineage defined by your Anzac. Your Anzac died in Beersheba for Palestinians to be a nation state. This manipulation has seen over 40 Anzac war memorials either bombed or bulldozed by the IDF. With no remorse for killing British soldiers in 1946, causing Britain to leave Palestine for not wanting to enter into conflict, they again demonstrate no remorse for the murder of aid workers in Gaza that happened to be British in 2025. This Australian government has supported, aided and abetted this genocide with the supply of finance and weapons in relation to a genocidal state defined on the international court record as being those murdering genocidal maniacs.
The greatest lie humanity tells itself is that we have outgrown human sacrifice. We call it by different names now and make our offering to different gods. We offer young men we call soldiers, as if the designation means that their mothers cry less when they die. We call masses of humanity collateral damage and turn our eyes away from the pictures of their lifeless bodies as we sip our morning coffee. And the truth is, we don't do it because we are heartless. We do it because we believe that it is necessary for the world to keep running. We do it because we believe that the gods whose favor we so desperately seek, freedom, security, prosperity, flourishing, that they demand blood as the price of their favor. We do it because we cannot see any other choice. And maybe that's why we read the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, on Rosh Hashanah. Because the story of the Akedah isn't about inconceivable obedience. When Abraham prepares to sacrifice Isaac, he is just accepting the same bargain of blood we still accept today, that some need to die for the world to flourish.
They send your children to die to do their bidding, while you remain ignorant of the state of affairs that you all tanty for in the great Australian tanties that have gone on every fortnight, organised by these Israel Defence League type people. While your government does the bidding of Israel and bows down to that Zionism, you heard at the beginning that Judaism is not Zionism, and Zionism is about an apartheid state being created for a particular chosen people in a land of no people for a people with no land. A blatant lie, while they gaslight you with their atrocity propaganda and continually rely on Hamas, which they directly fund themselves. You can see that they manipulate the situation by using a psyop against you in a continual barrage of blatant lies and propaganda that you all seem to fall for time and time again.
I was just obeying orders, he said, after many people got killed. I was just doing what I was told. Now, we've all heard that old chestnut, and that's what they call the Nuremberg defence. We're on David McBride today, who's in prison in Canberra. On the 14th of May 2024, the former Australian military lawyer David McBride was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in prison with a non-parole period of 2 years and 3 months for leaking classified defence documents to the media.
Former military lawyer David McBride has been sentenced to 5 years and 8 months jail in the ACT Supreme Court for sharing classified military documents with journalists.
If you're watching this, I'm in prison. Again, all I can do is thank the supporters. I'm not going to complain. I went into this with my eyes open. I always said I would go to prison with my head held up high, and it may be that I need to go to prison in order to fix this country.
Now, he admits, David, that he has broken the law, and he says that he did it for higher reasons. The brutal reality is that he, the whistleblower who wanted to see change in the defence legal scene, is in prison for 5 years, for more than 5 years, while Australians who actually did murder people in Afghanistan, who did commit war crimes, roam free. So now David is seeking leave to appeal to the High Court, the highest court in the land, and this is going to be dynamite, assuming that the court affords him leave to appeal. And the reason it will be, because if this case is heard, and it will have international repercussions, it goes to the Nuremberg defence. It goes to, are we just expected to obey orders no matter the cover-up or the crime? Since the Nuremberg trials and the aftermath of World War II, with all the Nazis on trial, it's been a central tenet of Western civilization and law that officers, that people have a duty, not just to their military oath, but to the world to do the right thing if they see a crime occurring. If their superior officer instructs them to participate in genocide, for instance, or any other atrocity, they are duty-bound, according to the Nuremberg principle, to countervail that order, to not obey orders to kill people. The Nuremberg defence describes the principle that we cannot say when participating in a crime that we were just obeying orders. Now, reporter Stephanie Tran for MWM here, she went down to interview David McBride, and this was not an easy thing to do. It took 1.5 months just to get approval, and there was approvals, there were false dawns, and then, sorry, we can't come on that day, and sort of thing. And then when she gets there, no, you can't take a laptop or a phone in. It was not easy, but in the end, she got the job done, and here is David in his own words.
Well, I'm here in prison, and I've just done a great interview with Steph Tran, so hopefully you will see an article on Michael West. The message I have to everybody out there is thank you so much for your support. We're doing this as a team. We have already won this. People will come after us, people will come after them. But just for Australians to see someone standing up for what is right and a lot of other Australians supporting that person is powerful. And we will continue to show the government that there are people in Australia that care about Australian values, that are not prepared to back down just out of a bit of a fear from the government. And there's a lot of us. I get so many letters to say, thank you, David, and whatever. I'm so proud to be an Australian today. It's not about me. It's not about my team. It's about Australia tomorrow and in 100 years' time, and the sort of country we want our children and grandchildren to inherit. And we need to fight for it. And thank you to all those people who've already done that. And as I said, we've already won.
A false belief of winning when you are up against an obvious occupying power that is hiding its command behind closed doors. You were warned about the jibby-jabby before it even came, and your country bowed down to that fascism and got locked in its homes while it accepted poison after poison. A Nuremberg trial is in relation to forced medical procedure and not the war crimes of a soldier committed on the ground in his single capacity. Governor General Hurley, Lieutenant Commander Fruin, and Angus Campbell Chief of Defence are directly responsible for the experimentation or biological warfare that took place during those lockdowns. A Nuremberg trial is directly evident and directly applicable to those circumstances wherein David McBride has only spoken about following orders in a battlefield wherein that battlefield might see a fear of not knowing when the enemy is not wearing a uniform. This is very clearly an issue when the Australian public is too stupid to realise what has gone on since Queen Elizabeth II's passing and the calling in of all movable property by the Pope in 2019 when he returned to the Vatican. There is a very stark similarity between the events here and Nazi Germany or a Weimar Republic that is not being addressed by any of the media, including those independent medias like the West report. It is at this point where a man can only do so much and may choose to just withdraw from the argument altogether because the people just sit on their hands accepting this persecution by a fascist government linked to very fascist pasts, a government that is aiding and abetting war crimes in foreign lands while committing those war crimes on Australian soil. You start to see now the manipulation of your politicians, the manipulation of your police forces who create anti-terrorism squads and fixated persons units to attack and go after anybody speaking up. It is very evident that your Anzac history was attempted to be defamed as a terrorist organisation when these people occupy very clearly what you are at international law while manipulate you into tantying in the streets for a foreign Zionist power that runs your government under a blue ensign with a 7-pointed star, an admiralty flag that was never flown in battle or land warfare until a foreign vessel took command of your Australian military forces, turning them into the Australian Defence Force.
You imagine that the empath, the one who has borne the pain of others for so long, will strike back with the same cruelty they have endured, but no resentful empaths do not raise the sword. Their revenge is stranger, deeper, far more unsettling. For when the empath finally awakens to resentment, they withdraw their gift, they stop carrying the burdens that were never theirs. They stop offering their light to those who consumed it without gratitude. And that withdrawal, that sudden absence of care, is felt like a death. The narcissist, the manipulator, the selfish soul who once drank endlessly from the empath's well, now discovers the well has run dry. That is the revenge of the empath, not vengeance through violence, but vengeance through absence, where once they absorbed wounds, they now reflect them back, where once they gave, they now withhold, and in this withholding, the other is confronted with a terrifying truth. The pain they always avoided is their own, and no one will rescue them from it. This is why the resentment of the empath is so dangerous. It is not a storm of rage, it is silence. It is the quiet closing of the heart's gate, and to those who thrived on the openness of that heart, such silence feels like exile. You see, the empath does not become cruel, they become just. And justice, for those who fear their own reflection, is unbearable. But beware, for the empath too must tread carefully. To live in resentment is to poison one's own waters. If the empath merely inverts their gift into bitterness, they remain chained to the very oppressors they sought to escape.
Does there come a point when you have been shown year after year after year the very realities at which you face and choose not to address them because you listen and spectate like it's a sport in a stadium where you don't have to stand up and voice your own selves and gather and be united against something that could be put before the judiciary very, very clearly, that requires a standing that would demonstrate an administrator of your lands having committed some of the most heinous crimes against humanity that have ever existed. You could choose to sit on your hands and keep this perpetual nightmare going, or you could comprehend the burdens that have been put in play, that have been taken on and put before courts and put before media, only to be constantly ignored. Your opportunity to rise and stand up against a crime against humanity brings about something so large that David McBride might actually be able to participate in that world event by demonstrating very clearly a command line responsibility that covered up war crimes and used your judges to help cover up those crimes. Leaking data to the media so that the media could get a grasp on a small situation when that media is controlled by the very powers that created that situation does not allude to the very foundations of your Anzac that got occupied, manipulated, divided, and put into demise by the constant attack of your constitution by all parties of parliament that you could have spoken up against. It is in your stupidity or ignorance that you allow this to continue. You have the ability to stand up and charge these people with a jibby-jabby and forced medical procedure, medical experimentation, which is a direct copy or a eugenics ideology that was put before the Nuremberg trials. This saw nurses, doctors, and command line responsibility face the consequences of their actions and establish something very clear-cut at international law, wherein just following orders was no excuse at law, and a Yamashita protocol applies to that command line responsibility. That command line responsibility, responsible for war criminals in Afghanistan, is more directly linked to a war crime that happened on Australian soil that nobody in any media outlet wants to address. This is something I have been adamant and clear about for the last 20 years, having discovered something in a council server that would allude to you losing your land, your homes, and your constitution. It is about time you realised the burdens that have been taken on merely to keep this going, so that it stays in your mind space and opens up the eyes of those that don't wish to address it. This be said of all media, Topher Field, West Report, list goes on. Avi Yemeni, obviously a manipulative media source under the thumb of that Israel First ideology. You can say the same for the national media in Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10 and the ABC. The ongoing silencing of what could put you in standing so that you could hold these people to account for crimes against humanity and crimes against nature have been ignored or silenced. And the difficulty in continuing this going leads one to think that walking away and letting you fall into that trap might be the best way to get you to realise.
Could I ask you a couple of questions about what's going on in the world right now?
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, no, it's fine, mate. Any questions can be asked. I mean, what's your thoughts about what's going on over in Palestine right now?
My thoughts about what's going on over in Palestine? Minimal, because what's going on over there is absolutely horrific.
I completely agree.
So, yeah, I don't know where to begin with it. I mean, initially, I suppose my first thoughts are that what people allow is what will continue. And that's been evidenced in this country for a long time now. Things progressively get worse, people progressively find convenient totems or demographics to target with their misdirected anger, basically.
Yeah, do you think there's anything we can do as people to bring it to a stop, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing is that if you're an apologist for genocide, then you're compliant towards it. I remember when I was a little boy hearing about, in the little bit of school that I attended, that the horrors of Nazi Germany and the things that they were doing to people. And the one thing that struck me as a child was, how could people comply with that? I had a similar feeling myself 4 years ago in this country and the world in general with regards to the pandemic and the lockdown, which had very little basis in actual medical science. And I think the main reason for the lockdowns were to stop people communicating, because communication is very important. So there's often a conspiracy of silence, you know, like a couple of boxers in an 8th round, and one of them's clearly got the upper hand, and one of them knows they've won and the other one knows they're not going to win, but the one that knows that they're winning doesn't want to get chinned, so they end up hugging for 4 or 5 rounds. And there's far too many people hugging Zionist warmongers and genocidal maniacs, hugging them with plausible deniability, hugging them with excuses, hugging them with secondary or tertiary issues. So yes, definitely hostages being taken is a terrible thing. Yes, definitely God knows how many Ukrainians and Russians dying is a terrible thing. But if people aren't going to take the time to inform and educate themselves on the background of and the causality, the factors in the equation that have precipitated these events, then they're not entitled to an opinion. And if you think you're entitled to an opinion, I would advise you to exercise your entitlement to educate yourself and to identify the factors in the equation. So there isn't a West Bank of Israel any more than there's a Northern Ireland. The whole reason there's not a British football team is because if there was, the English, Welsh and Scottish FAs would be kicked out of FIFA, because Northern Ireland is not internationally recognised because it is an illegally occupied territory. And the same applies with Gaza. With regards to what's my thoughts on that today, because I've got a lot of thoughts on this topic, but my thoughts on this today are that the visas, it's not good enough that in the past week starving, malnourished, critically ill children are being denied visas to be taken to the United States of America for medical treatment, despite the fact that most of the munitions and weapons that have been used against Palestinians are actually American in origin. That's not good enough. What they've done in the past few hours is they've actually banned the president of Palestine, or whatever title they use. It's all, titles. And they've banned any of the delegation to the UN from the Palestinian people appearing at United Nations in America. It's pretty obvious why they've done this, at least to me. Probably not to the majority of people, which is why I mention it. This is because there are major nation states such as France, who are leaders on the world stage, or one of many, and they've signalled their intention to recognise the Palestinian state. The reason that America have barred these visas, quite obviously, I don't know, but it's 2 + 2 = 4, and they don't want to create the scenario whereby Palestine can be recognised as a state. At the same time as they're talking about trying to get the United Nations Security Council to go in and aid NATO in their war against Russia, they're also trying to say that despite Ukraine having an president who is not actually legally the president of Ukraine,
Comedian, ain't
he's a comedian, and so is Benjamin Netanyahu, whose first name is actually not even that, and his second name is Polish. If you look at the background to the factors of the equation of these matters, then you'll recognise that they're self-evident. And I was at the first march against the Palestinian attack. I was at the second march, and the reason I didn't go along after the second march was I saw a lot of pigment-titled people creating divisions based upon race, and it has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's nothing to do with it. These imaginary lines are drawn up by inbred products of nepotism, and I don't care if you're a yellow peasant or a brown peasant or a pink peasant. You should be lucky that you're not treated the same as animals, because in their conveniently interpreted, bastardized pluckings of scripture, and certainly the their idea is that they're the chosen children of God, and everybody else should be lucky that we're living in their world. And this is how you can begin to understand the horrific treatment of the Palestinian people, because the people in Israel that are carrying this out have been bred into a society that is trained to see these people as nothing other than beneath them. And that's nothing to do with race whatsoever. It's everything to do with the class system. It's everything to do with entitlement. And it's everything to do with a material world that's devoid of any natural humanity. And most people that speak about human nature don't know what either of those two words mean. But if people can turn a blind eye to the children that are starving to death, being blown up in hospitals, to the doctors and the journalists that are being executed, to the homes in residential areas that are being given targeted airstrikes, like the woman who was a nurse in one of these hospitals, and she had her 7 children and her husband in their home in a residential area bombed, because this is how much they want to stop anyone, any of you, anybody from standing up and speaking the truth, because the truth is the only thing that can set people free. And what you all need to realise is this is training. This isn't something that happens to them and doesn't affect us. This is something that happens to them because they're relying on us doing nothing about it, and then by the time that it starts affecting us, it'll be too late, because they'll already know how to carry out a program successfully. And there's no lack of coincidence that a lot of the stratagems that have been used in Gaza over the last several decades are actually taken directly from the illegal occupation of Ulster and Northern Ireland. And this is why Britain used to be world leaders in military intelligence and close security. But if you actually look at the companies and who owns them, you'll find that in the last decade or so, Israel happens to have some of the most successful private security and private military companies, because they're the ones, like Britain had for many decades now, they've had for many decades, a targeted, controlled populace that they can work their tactics out on. There's a lot of people walk around the streets these days, think that they're proper raw, think they're proper hard, but they're a bunch of fussy-ass blood clots, because they haven't even got the spinal column to stand up and speak the truth. And if you allow something like that to persist and you silently turn a blind eye, don't think that you're any better than the Germans. You're worse, because Germans didn't have a template. And this is the most damning thing you can say about the majority of Israelis. Don't overlook the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Israeli nationals, and especially around the world, Hasidic and Orthodox Jews that have been protesting against Zionism and this subhuman behaviour. The simple truth of the matter is that these people are more likely to be the chosen children of the adversary than the chosen children of the Almighty. And if you are a child of Jah, Buddha, Allah, Krishna, whatever you want to call the Almighty, and you actually care about where your soul progresses from this incarnation, I suggest you stop turning a blind eye and realise that you are part of the problem or you're part of the solution.
Thank you very much, man. Great, that was great. Thank you very much.
Now, we can see an ignorance in many, and this might include David McBride in his belief in that this Australian Defence Force is linked to the Anzac when it is not. Now, I have run on the smell of an oily rag for the last decade, choosing to earn less than what is on Centrelink, to be able to push this knowledge out to all of you. We are not a media company per se. We have a media outlet in which to speak to all of you. And this constant draining of knowledge that everybody expects a teacher from has detracted from the ability to stand up and accuse them of the crimes they have committed. So if you can find it in your heart, there are donation links below the video which will allow you to participate. We are unable to move anywhere when we run on the smell of an oily rag. The ability to stand and do things is just not there. You need to push this information out and gather the people and stand up and make these accusations of your politicians, your judges, your magistrates, your police, and your defence force for operating in a line of authority not associated with your constitution, and occupying and administrating power which is obligated to rules of engagement in the Hague and Geneva Conventions. We can only move forward with your support. This includes donating through multiple channels given to you in the links below, but also in providing evidence of crimes that have committed within your local areas. This also includes somebody who is prepared to gather all the data of deaths, injuries, loss of jobs, mandates, forced mask medical procedures in your regions and across the country. You are watching a government get away with crimes against humanity merely for your non-participation. This is not a spectator sport. This involves you as a country realizing who you are while you are manipulated into tantying in the streets by Zionists who fund these very tanties that you all participate in. To be able to speak to people like David McBride when he is released from jail might actually benefit all of you by putting something to the High Court that would be harsher and more relevant than anything David could bring into that courtroom. He needs to know that your standing in your Anzac has been occupied, manipulated, divided and controlled, financially controlled by a moneylender in a reserve bank. all of your support is necessary in this struggle. It is impossible to do these things on the smell of an oily rag. This is not a media company that gets funding from YouTube or funding from any third party. All of the things we discuss are supported and helped by you as individuals or countrymen together. As a last parting video, I'd like you to pay attention to the brainwash that you have all been trapped into by believing in a federal government while ignoring something more local to you. Those councils just followed orders in relation to a forced medical procedure, quoting health authorities as their reason for just following those orders. Now, this Nuremberg defense applies all the way down to the council officers that are under the command of a general manager and Lord Mayor. So when we look at this grand scope of things, you need to look at the very brainwash that keeps you sitting on the couch as a spectator, believing that someone will fix this for you. No one is coming to save you. You must stand up together in the capacity given to you at law in your Anzac and your Kingdom of Australia and Australian Imperial Crown, forged out of the blood of 62,000 men that spilt their lives and their blood across battlefields in Gallipoli and Beersheba. You need to understand your history. You need to understand what manipulates your society. You need to comprehend the very evil that that thing is, and start to look inward at your local areas and your own selves. So help us to stop running off the smell of an oily rag by placing your donations into the links below, and then look at what becomes a local problem rather than a foreign national government problem. The foreign national government has gone outside of its rules of engagement in Hague and Geneva Conventions, as well as a whole host of other treaties and conventions that have taken place, including those in Nuremberg trials in 1946 for the use of eugenics in a world war. Now, when we look at a genocide that is happening in Palestine since 1946, we must remember that that genocide is a one-sided fight, whereas in World War II, two powers were at war with each other with military arms and military weapons. The Palestinians are an unarmed population being kept in an open-air prison camp manipulated by Zionists who have taken all their land since 1946.
Sometimes I feel like I'm too politically engaged at exactly the wrong levels. Like, I could tell you exactly a way that some pundit made Ted Cruz feel bad or something like that. But I can't tell you who's on my local school board. And I can't tell you who's on my town council, right? So that makes me think that's not political engagement. I'm engaging on some emotional level that makes me feel good or bad. You see what I'm saying? Are we too politically engaged?
I think we're too engaged to the national theater. I think it's a brilliant point. I never thought of that before, that the idea of being on a screen makes it more performative. I think to your point also about engagement, like politically, the engagement, my engagement started like going to my school board and speaking out against the cuts to funding. And when I was in 10th grade, it was started by meeting my local member of Congress and asking him about the Iraq war back then. And now people's engagement doesn't start in their school, in their community. It's sort of it starts on this national, global way. And I do think that's there's something not rooted about it that makes it so much easier for me to hurl an insult at Ted Cruz and laugh at him than it would be for me to hurl an insult against a Republican state senator who I'm going to see at church or on a barbecue every other weekend.
So thank you to those that have supported this up to this date, and well done to those that are starting to wake up to the actual foundations forged by your Anzac and all the international law that applies. We don't want to get to the point where we walk away because the country is just not willing to stand up for itself, and the burdens that we take on while we continue to enlighten you or bring you the light go dark. We would like to keep that light burning and make it burn much brighter. And we can only do that when you start talking to all of those around you. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit of a struggle to put together in this tired state, but you can start to see that the evidence is on the table, and it's up to all of you to be able to stand up and speak for it.